So, a really detailed 28-point diplomatic framework has just surfaced, and it proposes a potential path to end the war in Ukraine. It's an incredibly ambitious blueprint trying to tackle one of the most complex geopolitical conflicts of our time. Today, we're going to walk through its key pillars.
And that, of course, leads to the one big question on everyone's mind. Can a plan this detailed, with this many moving parts, actually work? To even begin to answer that, we've got to understand exactly what's on the table for everyone involved. So let's really dig in.
At its core, the entire 28-point plan really boils down to one simple, fundamental idea: give and take. For every single major guarantee or incentive that's offered, there is a huge concession that's required. Understanding that balance of trade-offs, that's the key to grasping this whole proposal.
All right, let's kick things off with the first huge piece of this puzzle: the new security architecture. This part of the plan would completely redefine the military and security landscape for Ukraine and the entire region. And it does that by trying to balance these powerful guarantees with some very, very strict limits.
Okay, so here's the core trade-off for Ukraine's security. On one hand, it would get some really robust assurances from international partners, a clear path to join the EU, and a European fighter jet force based in Poland for deterrence. That's a big deal. It's a serious guarantee of air defense without putting NATO boots on the ground. But the price for all that is steep. Ukraine would have to formally give up any dream of joining NATO, put a hard cap on the size of its military, and promise to never allow foreign NATO troops on its soil.
Now, this is a big one. The plan directly takes on something Russia has been talking about for decades. It would halt NATO's expansion to the east. This would be a monumental shift for the West, and it's really designed to be the bedrock of a new, maybe more stable security relationship.
And that brings us to the next section, redrawing Ukraine's map. And yeah, as the subtitle says, this is almost certainly the most contentious, the most difficult part of the entire framework. Our goal here is just to explain exactly what the proposal puts on the table.
The details on territory are pretty stark. The framework proposes that Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk would be formally recognized as Russian territory. The fighting would be frozen along the current front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia. In return, Russia would have to pull out from all the other areas it occupies. Then, to create a buffer, the parts of Donetsk that Ukraine still holds would become a demilitarized zone. And crucially, the plan says that any future attempts to change these new borders by force would be forbidden. All right, so after security and territory, we get to the third pillar, the economic reset. This isn't just about stopping the fighting, it's about what happens next. The plan lays out a massive financial package to rebuild Ukraine, but also a really clear, structured path for Russia to get back into the global economy. And the numbers we're talking about are just massive. It starts with an initial $100 billion just for Ukraine's reconstruction. So where does that money come from? Well, the plan specifies it would be drawn from frozen Russian assets that are currently being held by the United States.
Now, the way the plan uses these frozen assets is actually pretty clever, because it creates an incentive for multiple parties. That first $100 billion goes straight to Ukraine, no questions asked. After that, the U.S. would take a portion of any profits generated from the assets, and the rest would be used to fund new U.S.-Russia joint ventures. See what that does? It creates a clear economic reason, a vested interest for future cooperation.
And for Russia, this isn't just a switch you flip. The plan offers a step-by-step path back from being an economic outcast. It would start with sanctions relief in phases, then move towards setting up new economic deals in key areas like energy and AI. And the final step? Full reinstatement into the G8, a huge symbolic return to the status it had before 2014. Right, but a plan like this is just a piece of paper unless you can actually enforce it. So the big question is, how would this deal actually be implemented and monitored? How do you turn words into a lasting peace? Well, things would have to move fast, like really fast. On day one, an immediate ceasefire would have to take effect, with troops pulling back to new, designated lines. Right away, humanitarian efforts like prisoner exchanges would begin. And to establish a new political reality on the ground, Ukraine would be required to hold new elections within the first 100 days.
So who's the referee here? Who makes sure everybody sticks to the plan? Well, there'd be a joint U.S.-Russia working group to handle the day-to-day stuff. Watching over the whole thing would be a U.S.-led peace council. And the ultimate stick? The immediate snapback of sanctions. That means if any violation happens, they get instantly reimposed. And then there's this last, really critical piece of the puzzle. The framework includes a full war amnesty for all parties involved.
What that means is no future legal claims could be made about the conflict. It's a deeply pragmatic and probably very controversial measure that's really aimed at closing this chapter completely.
So after walking through the architecture of this incredibly complex deal, we're left with this one fundamental question. The framework offers an end to the fighting, it offers a path to rebuild, and it offers a new security structure. But it demands immense, profound sacrifices in return. It essentially asks everyone involved to weigh the very real benefits of peace against the massive costs of territory, of justice, and of national sovereignty.